Okay, in this tutorial I'm just going to show you what we're going to end up with. So we're going to look at animating multiple layers using some of the things that we've learned so far, so graph editor and duplicating layers, animating the stroke width particularly. So if I just play this through, so there you go, that's what we're going to end up with. So this kind of explosion effect. We have all these shapes radiating out at different points and also sequencing as well, so they kind of appear from the center one after another. Okay, so first of all we want to set up our project, so file, new project. If we call it animating stroke width, put a 2 on the end of mine. We're going to create a new composition, so just want to check the composition set. In fact, we can create the composite. We can click on new composition. Now, if you just make sure the frame rate is 30, the duration is 5 seconds, so type 500 in the duration box if it's not there already. And again, we'll name the composition. Okay, now I've also just put a downloadable asset on Teams, so if you can download that, it's just to give us a different background and just to, you know, and obviously when you do your own projects, it's something to think about. You can import your own backgrounds and things in. So we've just got a kind of notebook paper here. Actually, this is what that's done. Actually, it's created a composition. I think I had the settings set to create composition. I don't actually want it to be a separate composition, so I can just delete that. So I'm just left with the JPEG that I imported in. That's all I'm bothered about. And then I can just drag that JPEG down into the layer window. So I've got that ready as a background. Just need to resize that bit so it fills the dimensions aren't exactly the same as my composition, but I'm just going to stretch that out a bit to fill the background. Okay, so we're going to start by drawing out a circle. So if we click on the shape tool, select ellipse tool, and drag out a circle, if we hold down shift, okay, and you'll see that automatically creates a shape layer. We've got some of the settings in here, so if we go into content and ellipse 1, okay, so we're interested in stroke 1 here, which is one of the sub properties. You see lots of properties we can play around with again. The one we're interested in is stroke width. I'm just going to resize actually my circle, it's a bit too big as well, so give me a second. Okay, so if I just go back, click on the shape layer and then hold down shift and just scale that down, and do that again. Start to scale, hold down shift, and that will just scale it down, and then we go back to stroke width. So what I want to do is move the needle to 0, the playhead to 0, and take the stroke width down to 0. Move the playhead to 1 second. I'm going to just put the stroke width up to 15. So again, this is a kind of animation we're pretty used to now. So I have not inserted a keyframe, so I'll just go back to playhead to 0. Click on the timer and to 1 second, change stroke width to 15. That will automatically create a keyframe. So there we go, we've created a simple animation where the stroke slowly appears because the stroke width is going from 0 to 15. Okay, and then I can perhaps move the playhead along to say 20 frames here, 1 second, 20 frames, and take the stroke width down to 0 again. So we're kind of fading up and fading back down. So again, this is the kind of thing we're pretty used to now, manipulating properties. Okay, now I'm going to put the circle in the center of the screen. So I'm going to change the position. The shortcut for that is Control and Home. Okay, and that'll put it in the exact center. Okay, so I'm going to animate the position. An easy, simple way to do that, so again, just get rid of all these sub layers, is to just compress the shape layer, then press P for the position property. I'm going to move the playhead to the beginning there, and then click on the timer to insert a keyframe. Then if I press U, that will show us any other properties we've animated, so it shows the stroke width as well, so we can see everything we've animated so far. Okay, so then to change the position, I'm going to move the playhead to level with this second keyframe here on the stroke width, and just literally click and drag, change the position. Okay, now I'm going to add an ease to this, so I'm going to just drag a selection around all those keyframes, and if you remember, if we use F9, that will apply easy ease to all those keyframes. Okay, I'm going to then turn the graph editor on, which we've used before now. I'm then going to select the position property, so we'll have auto, make sure we've got auto select graph type on. This will show us the graph for the position property. I'm just going to alter that. Now if you remember, what this graph will do is rapid acceleration, pretty rapid deceleration, then the deceleration slows at the end here. So again, we can just see how that looks. So there you go, rapid acceleration and then a more gradual deceleration at the end. Okay, and then just to demonstrate that the graph editor can be used on all sorts of properties, so we've got the graph for the stroke width here. I'm going to just alter this a bit so it quite rapidly grows at the beginning here. We've got a split Bezier there at the top. Just do that again. So yeah, so just selecting this first anchor point here, so we want it to grow quite quickly here and then fade away at the end here fairly rapidly. So you can have a play with that, obviously keep testing till happy with it. So there we go, so grows rapidly and then fades at the end when it stops. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to hide the graph editor. I'm just going to create a second different shape now. Just compress that first layer, click on the shape tool, select rectangle tool. I'm going to draw out a straightforward rectangle that automatically creates a second shape layer. Okay, control home again to place that in the center, just making sure it's selected. Control and home, and that puts it in the center. Now I want to copy the position properties from layer 1, so if we go into layer 1, sorry, there's a better way of doing that. So we go back to layer 1, press P, that gives me the position properties. I can actually click on the position properties, press Ctrl C to copy them because I want to reuse them in layer 2. And they're very simply, if I click on layer 2, press Ctrl V, that then transfers those properties, gives those properties to layer 2 as well. So if we see, it's given those properties to layer 2. Now what just to be careful of, and what I didn't do, is when I paste the position properties, the playhead needs to be at 0. So the move is actually further down the timeline here, so I just want to move that to 0, and then as you'll see, that's then synchronized, both shapes moving at the same time, the same position. Just to reiterate, extremely useful when you're dealing with properties is to use the U key. So if we press U on layer 2, U on layer 1, we can see all the properties that have been manipulated so far. Now what I want to do is just with layer 2, I want to change the position. So at the second keyframe here, I want to change the position of the rectangle. So I'm going to move, just make sure I just select that second keyframe there, and I'm going to drag the rectangle and move it over here. So you can see now we've got them sort of exploding out the center, moving in different directions. Okay, now I'm going to do the same with the stroke width from layer 1. So I'm going to Control C to click on stroke width, Control C, then go to shape layer 2. So shape layer 2, into content, into rectangle, and then you see stroke 1 here. So then want to press Control V on stroke 1, and that will paste across that animation of the stroke width that we created earlier. Now again, just making sure that the playhead is at 0 when you paste. Now if it isn't, again, if you just go into stroke 1 to stroke width, okay, click on stroke width, and then you can just click on these keyframes here and drag them back to 0. So again, that stroke width animation is synchronized along with the position animation. And again, to make the layers easy to read, if you just click on you can just shift click on both layers, press U, and that will just show you the properties that have been animated rather than all the other properties as well, which can make it a bit difficult to read. So now if we just name our layers, now if you remember clicking on a layer, so click off to deselect, click on an individual layer, press enter, that activates it. So this is rectangle, and shape 1 is, again pressing enter, that is circle. So now we can use this animation. So again, rather than recreating everything from scratch, if we just compress those two layers by pressing U or compressing and using the arrow, and hold the shift click on both of them, we're going to duplicate them now a number of times. So Control D to duplicate, say 6 times. Okay. Now if we just open one of them, okay, pressing U, and if we go to the second position keyframe, and then what we can do is we can now drag off the duplicates. Okay. Ooh, sorry, dragging from the right place from the one that's been duplicated. So top right or top left. Oops, that's gone a bit crazy, so be careful there. Okay, and then you can drag those out until you have a kind of array of all of them, all the duplicates arrayed out. Okay, and then once you've done that, if I just test that, you see that we've got this kind of explosion effect. Okay, so now what we want to do is sequence these layers, I think, so they can appear one after the other, so it's slightly staggered the appearance. So we're going to stagger the sequence, so each one's, there's a 2-second gap between each one, sorry, 2-frame gap should I say, between each one appearing and animating. Okay, so what I want to do is select all our layers, so click on the bottom one, don't need to click on the JPEG, bottom one here, and shift click on top. Right click on the layers themselves, and we get the keyframe assistant here. We go down to sequence layers. Okay, now it should appear with overlap unticked, so if you tick overlap, and then in the duration box here, if we type in 428, so just to clarify that, the 428, it's a 5-second sequence, so 420, and it's 30 frames per second, so 428 is 4 seconds and then 28 frames, which is 2 frames less than the 5-second sequence. Yeah, so that accounts for this 2 frame lag between each layer appearing. Okay, so there we are. We've looked at animating stroke width and sequencing layers.